Hello there. Hi, this is Amazingly Chen. Welcome to my channel. Today's featured video is about a continuing love story for the month of love. For the month of February, we are continuing on the love story of the third love story that we're going to feature is from the romance of Ruth and Boaz. So we had started in the life of Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob and Rachel. Today is Ruth and Boaz. It's very, very romantic love story in the Bible, and it is the story of a kinsman redeemer, a very generous person and also a loving person. All right, let's go together. So who is Ruth? Ruth is the least desirable widow in the Bible of all time in Israel. She is a widow from the village of Bethlehem, and she is nothing but a foreigner from Moabite. She is in the other side of Jordan River. Moabites were first rivals of Israelites, and they despised each other. Moabites worship gods instead of Yahweh, the one true God of our universe. And secondly, she is a widow. She had already been married to an Israelite and a refugee for a few years back in Moab. In those days, nobody wanted to marry a widow. She was viewed as damaged goods. Moreover, because she has been already married to an Israelite who died, and she had been viewed as very suspicious lady. In addition to being a Moabite and a widow, she's also undesirable because she was very poor. She came to Bethlehem with her mother-in-law, Naomi. They are both without husbands to take care of them or property of their own. They had to rely upon the generosity of others to make it in life. Without a family or a dowry or an own, nobody would have wanted anything to do with Ruth. All right, so the eligible bachelor is from the village of Bethlehem, or of all Israel. He is everything going on with him: a successful businessman, successful farmer, descendant from the prominent tribe of Judah. He was well educated, very wealthy, and probably the greatest holder, the richest person in the area. Not only that, he was a man who exhibited deep faith in God. His integrity and character is a rare combination of justice and mercy in action. He had an impeccable reputation with all his employees and the town officials in Bethlehem. He showed charity to everybody, and he was cherished by everyone. Boaz is the kind of man that young women dream of. Oh. He was the type of man that fathers and mothers approved and adore. He was the type that would make a good husband and father, good material husband. Most women would have snatched him if they could. If Boaz is alive today, he would be gone to the Bachelor TV, probably, to be the bachelor and given his final rose to the most eligible bachelorette in town. How did he met Ruth? As he gazed the grain fields, he noticed a young woman among the harvesters. Wow, good eye. He knew that he had never seen her before, because he would remember the woman of such great physical beauty. So he did what any man in his situation would do, showing off. He went to his foreman and asked, "Whose young woman is that?" By this time, everyone in town knew that Ruth was there. The foreman proceeded to tell Boaz about her, that she was a Moabite, came back with her mother-in-law Naomi in Bethlehem, and they poor widow, both poor widows, and care for her mother-in-law and herself. And Boaz gave permission for her to glean grain behind the harvesters, and she had worked steadily all day with only one short break. In spite of learning that she was a widow and she is a Moabite, seeing her beauty and hearing about her character, she is very desirable widow in Israel. Boaz immediately went out into the field to meet Ruth. He offered her a special protection by telling her to stay among his servants and not to go to any other fields. He told his male employees not to lay a hand on her. Being an attractive foreign widow made her so vulnerable for attraction. He also provided her by offering her water throughout the workday, food at meal times, and gave his men special orders to pull some stalks from the bundles to make her work easier. Wow, what a generous man Boaz is. Boaz is amazed with Ruth. Now we see the providential relationship that God provided Ruth and Boaz. God's hand is divinely orchestrating this meeting of Ruth and Boaz. All meetings that we have doesn't happen by chance or by coincidence. Rather, God put both of them in the same place at the same time. Ruth could have gone to any other field in Bethlehem, but she ventured in Boaz's fields. If Boaz didn't come to greet his workers today, he may never have seen Ruth gleaning in the fields. So their meeting that day was very special, a providential meeting. It is always amazing to think about God's providence works in our lives. Have you ever wondered how you would like to find your mates in the right place and in the right time? Well, Ruth and Boaz meeting grew into a providential relationship. When Ruth told Naomi everything Boaz did for her, Naomi began to devise a plan. Well, this is called meddling mother-in-law. Does anyone here today has a mother-in-law? I do. But my mom are in Hong Kong. Mother-in-law are in Hong Kong. Naomi instructed Ruth to take a bath, put on her best clothes, dab a little perfume, and go to the threshing floor at night. Wow, mother-in-law. To uncover Boaz's feet. The threshing floor was a plateau where they would lay the stalks of grain on the ground, and bit at the kernels and chaff would be thrown up onto the air and blown away by the wind. The stalks were cut during the day, and grains was threshed in this evening. During the harvest season, most of the workers slept on the threshing floor. We see Boaz's humility there because he is the boss, he owns the land, he is the property, he is wealthy and very prominent, but he slept on the threshing floor with his employees. God uses all sorts of people in his providential plan. He uses the meddling mother-in-law and the matchmaker's employees so that Boaz could find his Ruth. After Ruth declared her love and desire for marriage on the threshing floor, Boaz knew that there was one hurdle he had to jump over. Even though he was one of their kinsmen redeemers, there was one man who was closer kinsman redeemer, and it was his prerogative to purchase Naomi's land and marry Ruth. So the very next day, Boaz went to the elders of the town to strike a deal. As he discussed the situation with the kinsman redeemer that was first in the line for Naomi's land and Ruth's hand, Boaz used some shrewd words. Even though the man was interested in Naomi's property, and he wasn't interested in taking two more mouths to feed, especially if meant marrying a widow from Moab with a mother-in-law. So in the law of levirate marriage, Deuteronomy 25, 5-16 states that the deceased husband's brother should take the widow as his wife. This law is very unimaginable nowadays for us. It's a law of mercy and protection to provide for the widow for the person who died. And if she is fruitful, the continuation of the family line. Ruth speaks to Boaz and said, "I have found favor in your sight, my lord, for you have comforted me and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant." Ruth has been won without being wooed. Boaz is thinking of Ruth's welfare, which is love indeed. And there's another relative closer than I. If he will redeem you, good, let him redeem you. So this is the trouble of Boaz. The man in love is doing something. But God's plan for this providential romance was much larger than just one eligible bachelor and one undesirable widow. In due time, Boaz lay with his wife Ruth and conceived and gave birth to a son, and they named him Obed. Now this name stands out as a very important name because it is part of genealogy of Obed became the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David, David the king of Israel, the greatest king of Israel. God's providential plan, he used Ruth and Boaz to be the grandparents of King David and establish an incredible heritage that would eventually be used to bless the whole world throughout the rest of the history. Because from King David, the line of the Messiah came from our Lord Jesus Christ, came from the line of David. Boaz and Ruth was his great-great-grandparents. Like Ruth and Boaz, we don't understand the significance of the two people whom God brings together or God brings in our lives. Ruth and Boaz doesn't have any idea that God was going to use them as an integral part of his plan of bringing redemption to the whole world. You may not feel that you are significant in God's plan, far beyond anything that we can imagine. In His providence, you never know how He is going to use your life to benefit others. So before the time is lost, Boaz is very interested with Ruth, and there is a closer relative that says he finds out that Naomi's property would have been his, and there is a wife attached and a mother-in-law. But Boaz, before any time is lost, summons 10 witnesses to the legal transaction and announces he had acquired Ruth to be his wife. This story is not a Disney film story. It doesn't show modern or Western romanticized view of marriage. Rather, it's something far more important. It's a story of people obeying God, seeing His good character revealed through His provision for them in His law. What is the application today? Ruth and Boaz became husband and wife, and Boaz went in to her. In that order, take note that they got married first. They have their union's blessing, and they did not choose to cohabit. They did not choose to be independent first in the family, or staying together first, having a relationship without the blessing of the family. But they choose to get married and have the blessing of the community and has the blessing of God. So in Ruth's story, we have wise application for Christian women and men today. Online dating and marriages and choosing and selecting a wife is depending on the chemistry, sexual or physical. But in this story, Boaz and Ruth got married because they obeyed the Lord and followed the standard of the blessing of God, the blessing of family before they cohabit. They got married first, and the kinsman redeemer provided for his wife. Thank you so much for being with me in narrating this story about Ruth and Boaz, and that we can learn and what we can learn from them. And thank you so much for you subscribing and watching my videos, and I really appreciate and value your time with me and the moments that you are watching these videos. And I thank you with all my heart, and I thank you that the Lord will guide you and bless you in whatever decision you make, and His wisdom will be upon you. This is Amazingly Chen, and say God bless you and bye for now. See you again in my next video. Please subscribe and press the notification button. Bye-bye.